so that we can start. Yeah. Hi, Amita. Thanks for
Hello.
coming here. Yeah, so I'll introduce you. It's a pleasure to host you. And I'm a big fan of Amita. I do follow her work. She has written a lot of papers. She has written packet publication books. So let me introduce her formally. Amita Kapoor is an associate professor in the Department of Electronics, RCSW, University of Delhi, and has been actively teaching neural networks and artificial intelligence for the last 20 plus years. She completed her master's in electronics in 1996 and PhD in 2011. During her PhD, she was awarded a prestigious DAD fellowship to pursue a part of her research work in Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, Germany. She was awarded the Best Presentation Award at the Photonics 2008 International Conference. She is an active member of ACM, IEEE, and INNS. She has also co-authored 4 books, including the best-selling book Deep Learning with TensorFlow 2 and Keras with Packet Publications. She has more than 50 research publications in international journals and conferences. Passionate about her skills for the betterment of society and humankind, she spends her spare time in various AI related IoT and healthcare open source projects. She was recently awarded the Intel AI Spotlight Award 2019 for her work on the early detection of acute myeloid leukemia using AI. Her present research areas include ethics in AI, cognitive architecture, deep reinforcement learning, and robotics. Thank you so much, Amita, for agreeing to come here and cognitive architecture, deep reinforcement learning. Yeah, for coming here and agreeing to come and speak and share some of your experiences in this thought leadership channel. So, Amita, to get started, how was your journey into AI? Then we can go into some of the use cases. Like, if you would to like to share anything specific, then we will move into some of the AI use cases.
Well, I would say my journey in the AI started from my college days, and the person responsible is probably Asimov. And if I go back further, then there used to come a serial called as Giant Robot. I don't know whether you have even heard about it, but those were the things which kind of motivated to go into the field of AI. And then I got a chance to study neural networks in my graduation itself. So I guess that was the starting part, and then I never looked back. So, I just went on learning more and more about it, even through the winters, despite everyone telling there are no jobs into it. And I guess it paid off.
That's really great. So, would you like to share some of the most useful application or use cases specific to AI ethics or AI that has yielded a huge benefits to any organization, or you have seen, or you have consulted, or you have your papers got applied anywhere? Some of these use cases.
AI today is being used at almost all places. Means any place you talk about, any company you talk about, AI is being used. For example, even in agriculture, I have a student working in the applications of AI in agriculture, and there we see that AI can be used from the point of sowing the seeds to the point of reaping the fruits and getting the production itself, and it helps in the increasing the yield production itself. That is there, it increases the yield. IoT applications of AI are unlimited, like, for example, the traffic management, which, if you are into any urban city of India, you have an idea of how terrible, how bad the traffic is, and we can use AI to manage that traffic. That not only reduces the pollution level and the time. It has been observed by the cities who have implemented this kind of traffic management system that it also saves a lot of energy, which is very important in terms, eventually energy is the main resource that we have to be careful about, especially when we talk about climate and all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's no limit of AI applications. I can just go on just on AI applications itself.
Yeah. So, what are the things that we should, our organizations should concentrate while incorporating AI ethics?
When we go for an AI solution, any AI solution, right, it is important to understand how it will work. Like, for example, means these are very standard examples which you will find with respect to AI and ethics. For example, there was an Amazon software which they used, in which they kind of trained an AI to do hiring process, to help in the hiring process, right? Now, the thing is, AI is just as good as the data it is trained. So, till that time, most of the people who work in the industry, especially the Amazon company itself, they were mainly males. And what happened was that AI got trained with all those resumes, but eventually the only thing it learned was differentiate between male and female, and it was basically rejecting women candidates. So, if anywhere in the resume there was woman, it was rejecting it, right? So these kind of things are happening in AI. So whenever we are going to apply a solution in AI, it's important for us to see, is our data that we have gathered a good representative of the population? First of all, that is very important. So when we talk about AI, the first and foremost important thing I would say is exploration of data, right? That is important, like especially if, like for example, right now we are doing a lot of work in the diagnostic. Even the work that I did with Peter Moss organization, that was about the leukemia detection, right?
Mm-hmm.
The AML detection. Now even in that case, if you are going for a leukemia detection and if my data is not representative of the population itself, then my findings are not validated enough. They cannot be used in all circumstances, and that can cause, issues of bias, that can cause the issue of discrimination. And then another issue, like if it is an AI result no one even questions, so that by itself is a big question mark. Should it be that way? So these are the things which I guess has to be handled, especially when we are going for an AI solution. So it's important that it is unbiased and it is really taking care of the whole uh, you know area which it is representing. That is important.
Okay. So, good start, Amita. So, actually, when we collect data from different sources, like we don't get enough data sometimes because those data are not collected for the biased or the minorities. So, what means should we do? And there are different problems. So, for healthcare, as you said, right, computer vision. So, what are the things that we should try to incorporate, like auditing, or what are the things that, so we assure that all sections of the population have enough data so that we can build a model which is fair enough.
It's like more of the application orientation, I would say. Like for example, let us say like there's one application I'm working on, that is using face recognition for home surveillance, right? Now if I'm talking about a home surveillance, it's my home, and the people of my home are the one which my AI should be able to recognize. I don't want to recognize anyone from outside. So for this unlimited data, which is just this population, is enough. but if I have to make a system, let us say school and attendance of school, then it becomes important that it has a wider range. So the data has to be, collected from the school. Information of the student has to be there. And similarly, if I move further, like if I'm making an application which is for the detection of a higher population, right? In that case, it becomes again important that the data is representative of that. If it is not, then I have to specify that it is not going to work there. That kind of, like we say that any device, any tool has a particular parameter that it is going to work only in this range. So I guess with AI also we need to mention that this is going to work in these conditions.
Okay. Okay. So, going on, moving to the next one, like can you explain like some of your domain areas? Like you have worked on IoT, like your books are on IoT on the packet publication. Some of the use cases which may we, as a normal data engineer or a data scientist, we don't know, or we would love to explore, because you are also associated with research and as well as industry. So some of those name use cases which everybody should know and they should start thinking of.
when we talk about IoT, again, the use cases which I've mentioned a lot in my book on hands-on artificial intelligence with IoT, again with the PAC publications. In that book, I have taken a lot of use cases. So, like for
Mm-hmm.
example, there is a use case where we can use with the IoT, we can use it with the wearable sensors. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So when we talk about the wearable sensors, finding the heart rate, heartbeat, even finding out if a person is, more substantial, like it is possible that the person might have a heart attack or something. The parameters are ranging in that sense. So these kind of applications are possible. Similarly, preventive, things can take place in industries. For example, you can use a sensor on the instruments devices itself. Like for
Mm-hmm.
example, if I have a car factory, so all the equipments which are being used, or even just a car, for example, I can have sensors built within the car, so that before the car breaks down, the sensors are sending the message, and it is possible for the company and for the person who is driving the car to know, oh, my car now requires maintenance, otherwise in after 5000 miles or after 500 miles this will break down. Right. So these use cases are there, and how we can go about them, all these are mentioned in that particular book, and many such applications are there. Energy production, energy saving can be done with the help of IoT applications of AI. So when I talk about IoT applications of AI, what we basically mean is we are using AI as an analyzing tool or as a prediction tool, but the data is collected in real time through the IoT devices. Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of use cases are possible in that, and many of them have been a part of that particular book, I would say.
Yeah, so this is just my question, like inquisitiveness. Like, sometimes it happens like people from a particular race has different health attributes. Say, the sportsmen usually have low pulse rate, or say people born from a particular section has higher like platelet count or something like that. So how can we ensure that we are ethical as well as we are rightly calibrating our models so that these sections of populations are correctly identified, that diseases are correctly identified?
A
So
very
because
good question. A very good question, Samishna. And here I would give an example of a very means there's an app which I use, True. I don't know whether you have heard of it or not. It's an app which basically takes you can record the menstruation cycle of a female there.
Mhm.
Now, in that particular app, means each female is different. We all have different cycles, different moods, everything different. So what they do is they ask you whether you want to give your data or not.
Mhm.
Right. So when you give your data, your personal data, and you're ready to share with it, that comes the first part of ethics. You are not taking the data without telling.
Mhm.
So the first and important part is you're asking the person whether they would be willing to give that particular data or not, and whether that data will remain anonymized or not. Again, very important part, right? Means okay, fine, I'm ready to give my data, but will it be open to everyone? What I have given, that is definitely not done. So if this particular ethics have to be followed, then the AI part comes. So what AI does is, as the particular app collects more and more data, it will become better and better at prediction.
Mhm.
Right. So then it can always say, okay, fine, I have been trained till this time, and this is my accuracy or this is my confidence level at the moment. But
Mhm.
as it will go on getting more data from the users, it will go on improving. So that is the way I would say, one has to build up an AI application. It's not one movement and over. It's an iterative process which will continue. Just like we
Mhm.
continue to learn, the AI network is also going to learn continuously.
Yeah, so anything special of incorporating ethics in it? See, normally we deploy models, we follow iterative process, we try to improve the accuracy, model accuracy, and the parameters like what we are looking. Sometimes we may look at how do we improve the precision. Sometimes for cancer detection we may look at how do we improve the recall rate. For incorporating ethics so that we are actually giving a fair prediction for everybody, do you think we should have more parameters or considering more metrics into which are not yet means the it's not yet known for the general public? So are you exploring anything, because you are also researching these areas?
When we talk about ethics, the first question that comes is, how do we define ethics? You see,
Mhm.
ethics by itself is a very abstract word if we talk in terms of general layman. What may be ethical for me may not be ethical for the second person. For example, if a
Mhm.
person is hungry, maybe
Mhm.
stealing bread is not unethical. Maybe.
Mhm.
I'm not saying
Mhm.
it is not, but maybe for that particular person it is not. For me, yes, it is, but it may not be for that particular person. But
Mhm.
yet, saying that doesn't mean that ethics is so ill defined. If we go through the understanding of ethics, ethics is something which tells us what is right and what is wrong,
Mhm.
right? So, uh, if we come to our individual lives, means first of all, before teaching ethics to machine, it's important that how do we teach that ethics to human?
Mhm.
Right. So when we come to, let us say, ourselves, how do we teach that ethics? So there is a well-defined rule. So, as a parent, you tell the child this is right and this is wrong. That is
Mhm.
how the child learns that this is right and this is wrong. There are well defined ethics. Like if we talk in terms of religion, also, there are well defined ethics, whether you go to the Vedic philosophy, whether you go to the Buddhist philosophy, whether you go to the Christian philosophy. There are 10
Mhm.
commandments, there are 10
Yes.
shilas of Buddhism, and similarly, Vedas have their own specified rules. So it's
Correct.
not that the rules have not been defined. The rules have been defined, different words, different cultures, but each culture has their well defined rules. Now, when we come to the ethics of that, we have to see how we can incorporate the same thing here. So, one
Mhm.
of the common problems which we have is the problem of discrimination, okay,
Mhm.
which arises because the data is not validated properly, right? So, for example, when we are doing the AI part, so for example, assuming you're using TensorFlow, then TensorFlow has a data validation mechanism. So, what
Mhm.
we do out there is we can see whether the distribution of data, not
Mhm.
just individual data, but whether the distribution of the data that we are feeding to our model is
Mhm.
coming within the valid range or not. So, if the data which we are using for prediction or which we are taking in for prediction does not lie within my validation range, then
Mhm.
obviously whatever I'm going to predict for it will not be correct.
Correct. Correct.
Right. So these are the things which we can definitely incorporate while we are designing the system itself, right?
Okay.
And that the use case which rule to apply will depend upon the application that we are taking into consideration.
So the data has to be rightly benchmarked for different sections of the
Yes.
people, right? So
Yes.
that the model behaves same or fairly across all the population segments or all the different demographic groups that we are actually going to predict, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, any other use case you would like to talk about, like robotics, quantum computing, or photonics? You have worked all across this, and these are very specialized domain. We won't get those experiences. It would be great if you could share some of your experiences in AI ethics. How we can help AI ethics to in these solutions.
Okay, I will talk about some of the applications in which I have been working. Like first of all, I would say there's a work that I have been doing, and it is kind of a continuous work because I've been working on it for about 5 6 years. And this work is basically using social network analysis and AI, and a little bit of probably we are moving it towards the quantum part, where we are trying to see how does the interaction of human beings can be modeled using neural networks or using machine learning models or deep learning models specifically. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, like for example, we started it up almost as a curiosity. So just studying, means it started with a very simple thing that when as a teacher you are in a class, and sometimes it does happen that you get very attached to the students, right? And you are very much aware of what is happening within the class itself. So how groups are being formed, how groups are not being formed. So just out of curiosity, I thought, okay, let us just try and understand what is happening in the class. Is there a dynamics here also that is taking place, and can we study that dynamics, how it is changing across time and all that stuff? And I had a class with whom I had an interaction from their first year till their fourth year. So I started this experiment from their first year itself. All
Mm-hmm.
right, so I started getting the data. Means obviously I took their permission when they were at first year. Although to be very honest, maybe it is not very ethical because I was their teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
probably they may not say no to a teacher, right? But I asked their permission. I took their permission and I kept the data anonymized. Means it's not there, right? And then I did the analysis how the network between the friendship network between them is changing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then I used some ideas from positive psychology. So the positive psychology is thing which tells about individual characters and strengths. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I related that characters and strengths of individual that we had, and based on that, we designed a neural network, and then
Mm-hmm.
we allowed that dynamics to see how that network evolves in time, and we were able to see that even with the neural networks, just as in the case of humans, the evolution is there, and that evolution changes with how you present the information.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Like, for example, this is something which is being used also in the sense, like, for example, that Nemo movie, if you have seen that, you have kids, so you must have definitely seen Nemo movie. So, if we
Mm-hmm.
talk about that Finding Nemo movie, right? So, if we
Mm-hmm.
talk about that Finding Nemo movie, there is a story about it. The story says that when they first made the movie, it was differently oriented. The story was the same, but instead of starting with the child and the father, they started up with the first story where the mother was there and then the mother got lost and all that stuff, right? Which is something which they, in the original movie which we see, they show us later on in the, as a flashback. So they kind of showed this to the audience and they got it. So what happened was the audience had a different reaction when it is in one sequence as compared to the other sequence. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And this same thing we were able to prove using our method, and experimentally we were able to verify that if we are changing the sequence, the network dynamics is changing. The people who are more popular become less popular, and the people who are less popular can become, more central to the whole network, the whole group. And we did it for a small group, we did it for a large group experimentally, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of worked. So that was, I would say, that was a very interesting study, although it is still in between because you have to take it up that the large experiment can be done into the real world as well. So that is things we are still working on, but that's
Okay, so
interesting
is it
topic.
yeah, yeah, what kind of model, I mean, out of curiosity, right? What kind of models did you use? Did you use Monte Carlo simulation or doing the
I
dynamics?
use recurrent network basically, and I used a very simple network in the initial phases. I used a Hopper network. All right. Now you may ask me why a Hopper network? Why? Because Hopper network very much behaves like the humans itself. The Hopper
Okay.
network is very similar to humans in the sense that it learns using Hebb rule. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
Hebb rule is a neurobiologist rule, and what it says is that two neurons will fire. The interconnection between the two neurons will increase if they fire at the same time, right?
Okay.
And if we come back, if I replace the interconnection between neurons with the friendship between two individuals, then two
Mm-hmm.
individuals, they tend to become friends when they both have similar views on one topic. So let us say
Okay.
we are in a class and we are just, we have just met each other for the first time, and I say, come, let us go to canteen, and you also want to go to canteen and have tea or coffee. We become instantly friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if such events go on happening, our interconnection strength increases.
Increases, right?
So that was the model that we used. Obviously, we had to modify it. Means I've explained it in a very simplistic way, but we had to modify it so that we can incorporate the character strengths, right?
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, we used that particular model as our base model and implemented it.
Okay.
So it
So,
works, yeah.
yeah, so we can use such kind of models in any dynamic environment. Say like mobility. How say means based on my knowledge, I'm just trying to understand from you. Maybe collaborative filtering. How user
Yes,
movies association changes, like finding out what is the likelihood that the user is going to select this movie, because it's a cold start problem. We don't know the user, but something learning from the friends and friends of friends, we can find out those things. And also we can see
yes,
that how much ethical we are, like are we rating the minorities, are we able to find out the minority users also, and can we recommend them specific regional movies maybe for the minorities. So we can also
yes.
use that in a recommendation type of problem also, right?
Definitely, very
Just
good idea. Yeah.
yeah, just thinking aloud, like from trying to learn and see where all we can use this. That's great. So anything you would like to talk about robotics, and of course some of the challenges, might there must be challenges, means like you are doing from research, but what if we try to take it from your research and put it into a production? So what are the expected data sets that can have, and what are the challenges in deploying it? And also, if you could cite two questions, means I just my head is going, so I just threw it. And on the robotics also, you
Okay,
have done a
first
lot
I
of.
start up with the robotics part.
Yeah.
In terms of robotics, I would say I've been working up, means like in my college, I set up a robotics club. It was part of the IIT Mumbai initiative of e-Yantra, and we had a lot of students becoming part of that robotics club. And we made small projects, like, obviously you start with the line following robot and all that stuff. And eventually the students have been able to make up a system which was able to, is it was a combination of sensors, combination of apps and all that stuff, in which we were able to even make our agricultural robot, in the sense it wasn't very big that it was doing everything, but it was something which could take care of plants, watering of plants. So it's something like, for example, since again, our ideas come from our need. So since I'm basically based in Delhi, and I have a small house, and I love plants, but I am a very lazy person, and unless I put alarm, I forget everything. All right, so I always forget to water them, and as a result, they will die, my
Mm-hmm.
plants. So eventually I was like, there should be a system which can look after the whole thing, and it is, timely, and not just time, because as people tell me that plants, it's not that you just put it up every time, you keep an alarm and they will work. You have to know how much water they need. So sometimes they
Exactly.
may need more water, sometimes they may need less water, and that is something which is totally abstract for me. I'm kind of, how to know about that. So we designed a sensor. It was an indigenous sensor that we built using the aluminium hangers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we took aluminium hangers, we cut them up, we built our own sensors to keep it low cost, because you have a club but you don't have funds. Funds are always limited, especially when you're working in a government organization, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we built our own sensors, then we added it up with the Raspberry Pi. We also started with Android, means Arduino and Raspberry Pi. We tried with both of them, and then whatever was information was coming, we connected it with a again another system, which was a motor controlled water system, which was controlled through the Arduino or Raspberry Pi, and at the same time could be controlled manually through the app. So that was one system which we kind of developed, and that is there. Another robotics part is I participated in a NASA competition.
Mm-hmm.
NASA had a space centennial challenge, robotics centennial challenge, and the idea was to control a robot which they are sending to the Mars. So Valkyrie robot is there, which is almost human-like, and we had to control it. Now, doing the agriculture robot here is much easier because it was very much present with us. But now, with the NASA challenge presented, the robot was in Mars and we have to control from here. And that means all the commands that you have to send to it, they have to take into account, you see, the distance as well. Again,
Mm-hmm.
you can have AI, but AI can just augment it. AI cannot do the whole thing by itself. So you
Exactly.
have to have a communication with the robot back, so that you can suggest it, tell it what to do, and the commands take that, the time from signal to go from Earth to Mars. That time you have to take into account, and also you have to take into account that the signal that you are getting from the robot is also delayed signal. It's not the immediate signal,
Mm-hmm.
right? So means when we started with it, the initial challenge was Robert will fall. Why? Because we gave a command to put up his leg once, but by the time it puts it down, the delay, and it falls down, right? So it is not able to walk properly. So these challenges are there which one faces when you start up with it. It was something which we did in 2017. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And from that time, lot of improvement has definitely happened. So things have become much better even with that particular background. But it was interesting, and the challenge was computational
Okay.
at that moment. Definitely, there was no computational resources available which you could use, which could be as fast so that you can do all the calculation here and send it immediately to the robot. And that's why there was lag. We were doing the AI part here, and we were sending the signal there. So in the time domain that was happening, the robot was not knowing anything, and there was a delay. So the computational speed was a very big challenge at that stage.
Okay, so
That is
so
it. Yeah.
in this robotics, if I understand, like what are the things that we should be careful about to include ethics? Means like we should be like having a fair data set in terms of commands of the robots that we are able to give. So we should have like equivalent data sets. Like what are the different things that the robot can do, and the gender of the robot, how is it behaving? Is it not the response is not to like female, male? Apart any other thing like that from
These
ethics
are
point
very
of
nice questions. Unfortunately, we cannot, means to be honest, I do have answers, but I know we cannot, force them. For example, there are a lot of sex robots available.
view?
Means personally, I will say that is wrong, in the sense that it is objectification of female, right? But they are there, so you cannot do a lot about many things. But still, at the same time, when we talk about the robots, the important thing is how we are using them. Again, I would not say that robots for war or robots for army is not a very ethical thing to do. All
Mm-hmm.
right, what if it goes in a command in a loop? You're not able to give a kill, you're not able to give it a stop command in the
Mm-hmm.
right moment. That can always happen, right?
Yeah.
So using a robot for army or things like that where human life can be at risk, I would say that is not the right place for robot. That is not where we should use a robot. We should use robot for things where human life, if we do use human, is more in danger. For example, like for example, in India, when we talk about India, the manual scavenging, that should stop. Why should a human go down? Or for example, mining. So many
Mm-hmm.
mining incidents happen. We can get
Exactly.
that task being done by a robot. We
Robert.
will get them. Yeah, we can get the things, and at the same time, we do not lose life. Right. So, but
That
that
is
is
also ethics, right? That is also
that is
ethics.
ethics, and that is how it should be. But then the companies sometimes do not think that idealistically. They say robot cost more, humans cost less, which is sad, but again sometimes true, especially when we are in a third world country.
Yeah. So you talk about the computation challenges, right? So computation now we have deep learning, and also so the carbon emissions are happening because of the deep learning models, right? So do you think so there should be a balance between ethics and like because we are harming the environment at the end of the day, the environment gets polluted. So do you think there should be like there are some questions from the viewers like they're asking on the regulatory guidelines of AI ethics and courses. So we'll take those questions, but before that, like do you think there should be some guidelines like how ethical is my solution in terms of environmental hazards? Like if I'm training a model and doing carbon emissions, so that is not healthy for my environment, right? So do
Yes,
you think?
definitely, but it is still less healthy than mining for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? And then
Right.
we can also use AI for doing more energy efficient data
Solutions.
solutions.
Fine.
So that can be done, and yeah, even means like energy means it can distribute the energy such that when the energy need is less, then it is doing the data work, then it is doing the computational work, so that the
Okay.
energy needs itself becomes less, which Google
Mhm.
had done in their data centers, and they have been able to significantly reduce their energy consumption. So it's possible for us to use AI for positive means. It's our tool. We have to use it positively.
Yeah. So, any like you talked about the computational challenges. Do you think those exist today also? Like because we have different cloud providers, we are using deep learning. You have also talked about means you have also experience on reinforcement learning. Means one of the primary areas where robotics solutions are based on. So, do you think any other challenges we should face in the near future? Um, because
Look,
in the
computational, in terms of computation, I would say a good amount of work has happened, especially with the GPUs and now TPUs, and then this NVIDIA new chips and all that stuff, and even Apple new chip. They have been reporting to give very good results and very fast results. So I think computation and data, these the two major challenges which AI had or deep learning had when we started somewhere in 2015. When we talked about the deep learning itself, those two challenges have been quite significantly managed, and now with the quantum computers coming into picture, it is possible not only to have more data in less place, because quantum offers you that possibility. In a quantum, when you talk about a qubit, it's not that you have to have just one value of 1 or 0. In the superposition state, you can keep the whole all the possibilities there. So the use of quantum computing gives us better chances of having more data, saving more data, or retaining more data. And at the same time, since the superposition things happen in parallel, right, we can also have faster results.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is still to reach that stage where it becomes commercially or actually available to me at home level. There are companies which are doing that. D-Wave is doing, IBM is doing, right? So you have small computers, small cloud quantum computers available to you for experimenting and making up the models. Then TensorFlow Quantum is there, which is
Mm-hmm.
again, providing us a means of experimenting with quantum computers, understanding what quantum data might be, how we can use it, and how does it affect the whole, prediction of AI or neural networks itself. So these things have become possible, but yes, I guess we will take about a year, two, or maybe a maximum five to reach a stage where we are at the present stage in terms of desktops kind of a thing.
Okay. And in terms of like you talk about quantum computing, we are moving to super generation of computers, right? In
Yeah.
term, you can handle more data. But so can this if you this replace the robotics, supercomputing replace humans? So how do we make like a ethical
Do we want
choice?
that?
No, we don't want that. But it is going. Many of the automation tasks are this AI can replace humans, right? So how do we encourage societal like not to harm
There
the
are
society?
control bodies for that, like for example EU. If you talk about EU, European Union has been developing quite strict AI regulations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I presume, means I would hope, not presume, I would hope that other countries should follow the lead. IEEE has also given a lot of regulations on AI, what should AI be allowed to do and what AI should not be allowed to do.
Okay.
Look, it's the same thing. Means I'm quoting Asimov out here. It's the same thing with the AI. AI is like an atom bomb. You can use it to destroy, or you can use it to generate electricity. The power
Yes.
that we are getting, all our houses have power today because we are using the nuclear power. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like the nuclear power, but how we use it is on us. With AI, you can do it this way that you can replace humans, but do you want to do that? Or do you want to augment humans? Let us do the work which is very manual, which is not really important for humans to do. Let that work be done by AI, and let the rest work be continued to be done by humans. We can
Mm-hmm.
have a AI generating a painting, but a AI generating painting cannot replace a human painter and should not replace a human painter. A human painter might get inspired by that AI painting, may come up with something even better, right? But there is no replacement, and there should not be any replacement. That is more important, and that depends upon the regulatory bodies. That depends upon people like you, people like me, who are at places where we can raise our voices and say, no, this should not happen, this is a better way of use of AI, this is not the best use of AI, right? So that is, I guess, on our shoulders. We are going to tell the future how AI is going to be used, and we should tell, and we should be, saying what is right and what is not right out there.
So, so taking one question from Orkupur Sarkar, is there any standards which you're talking about that EU has come up with a draft, right? So, or any other guidelines that researchers should?
IEEE has lot of AI scientists in their forum, members of IEEE, and they have come up with regulatory. If you just search IEEE AI regulations, there is a list of hundreds of such regulations. What AI should be able to do or not. In case AI makes a prediction, who is responsible? There has to be a responsibility when we are talking about AI, right?
Mhm,
So who is responsible? The one who has designed, the company who is selling. These responsibilities should be fixed. You just cannot say, oh, this was because of AI. And you cannot just, say, I'm not responsible. If I, as a company, am selling an AI product, then the responsibility should be mine,
mhm.
right?
Right.
So these all regulations are there, and definitely it's not written in stone at the moment. We are still developing, we are still understanding, and definitely, improving as things are going on. Like,
Okay.
for
So,
example, with adversarial attacks, now we
uh
realize that they are there, and definitely how they can affect
Models.
positively as well as negatively, right? So if someone is using AI for a negative way, for example, if someone is using it for surveillancing of humans without their consent, that is a negative use of AI. That is an unethical use of AI. So
Mm-hmm.
there are adversarial attacks to take care of that. Means
Mm-hmm.
right. And in the case there is a positive use of AI, for example, if you have a self-driving cars and then someone can use adversarial attacks unethically to affect that self-driving car. Right. So again, that's what I'm saying. The technology, even adversarial attacks, is a new technology in the sense that it's a new understanding that we have got about neural networks or deep learning models. But
Mm-hmm.
how it is used depends upon humans. So eventually, it is we who are responsible.
Yeah. So that means this IEEE and I would say this EU has come up with guidelines, but based on domains, like you talked about the self driving cars, right? So what are the regulations for each of these domains? Say privacy of data, say self driving cars, robots, and what we have talked about. You talked about a model, Hoffield model, right? So different kinds of scenarios, mobility scenarios. So for each and individual scenario, what could be the like the ethical part of it? We accountability responsibility is there, but how who is the actual along with data sciences who should be responsible to see the solution as a whole is ethical, so it's not doing damage as well as it's serving a fair model for everyone.
Look, one thing is we talk about regulatory bodies that they are become responsible of designing that. They
Mm-hmm.
are in the process. Right now, we do not have a single body which is recognized by everyone. Right. So, for example, European Union has laws which are now recognized by European Union, where they are advocating the privacy of data so that data ethics is maintained. Right. They
Mm-hmm.
are talking about that AI should not be used in areas which it kind of interferes with the privacy of a person. Right. For example, if I remember correctly, UK had tried to use face recognition for surveillancing of people walking on the roads itself, so that they can detect the criminals from the road. But that kind of application, in terms of European Union, is unethical use of AI. Right. So the thing is, each body, each country today has their own regulations. Even India has their own specific regulations, but they are still kind of getting built up, in the sense it's almost just like, that virus and virus hackers, basically virus and antivirus war right now. So you come up with one regulation and there is a new virus in the market. So same way it is happening right now. You come up with a regulation and there is another possibility where how we can misuse it. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess it will take some time for us to settle out. It will take even countries some time to realize what is important or not important. Right? For example, in our country, if you even talk about privacy of data, means I tell to my colleagues, my friends, that please do not share your data. You should be concerned about it. And the simple answer is there's nothing to hide. We are such an open book. Why should we hide? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But that becomes wrong in the world where
Uh,
we're living, because
mm-hmm.
that can be used to manipulate you. That can be used to influence you into doing things which you may not otherwise do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that ways one has to be careful. One should be careful. But again, the things comes when the governments, organizations, institutes, educational institutes, they all play a positive role. They all
Okay,
have to
so
join their
everybody
hands
they
together.
have
Yeah,
to
they
join
all have to
and
join their hands together. Only then it is possible. One organization cannot do it. We cannot just put it up. Okay, government will do it. No, that won't happen. Government can pass law, but its implementation comes to us,
mm-hmm.
right? So that phase we all have to come, and even for government to pass law, educationers have to tell them that this is what should be done. Right.
Okay, so there should be like a hand in hand working for everyone to
Yes.
ensure that it is for the betterment of the society. And would
Right.
you also say that that sustainability is also a part of AI ethics? Is it
Can you please repeat? I just missed your word.
sustainability, sustainable solutions?
Oh
Is
yes,
that
definitely. It should be. It should be. It should be very much part of AI, and it can be. Means one thing is it should be, and we do not know. It may be. It may be. It may not be. It's not that way. In most of the solutions, we can have sustainable AI solutions possible with us. So it
okay?
should be part of AI solutions. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
And another taking another question like Krishna Puril. What stream to education should one pursue to make a career in AI ethics? Do you recommend any specific courses?
Well, I would say, first of all, AI ethics as such is not a course in the sense of a subject, but yes, for understanding AI ethics, understanding of how AI systems work is important. You may not be very good at coding, but you have to understand what AI is, how different AI models are working, what NLP is, what computer vision is. Understanding of philosophy is important. Understanding of the working of mind is important. And I would suggest Marvin Minsky, Mind and Machine, as a very good starting place for understanding how it is working. Similarly, there is a Nielsen's book on mind and basically artificial intelligence. That is very important. He raises very nice philosophical questions about AI. So, these are the good starting points for going into the field of AI ethics and understanding what are the questions that, you know, we should be looking up into.
Yeah, I think there in future there will come up some positions like ethics officer, AI
Yes,
ethics.
they should. They should definitely. Means we may not have a subject AI ethics in school or college at the moment, but it will definitely develop.
So there are new openings and the new
Yes,
career
they
fields
should be there.
emerging.
Yes, they will be. Means if I know correctly, means I have been approached for the development of course of 9th, 10th, 11th, yeah,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence for 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. So seeing that if we are starting AI at this school level in India, definitely will be coming up with AI ethics also sometime soon. Maybe not now, maybe a year or maybe 5 years from now, but it will come and it will be there. Yes.
Yeah, another avenue that data scientists can think of having in their career,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So yeah, we have talked about some of the use cases, some of the challenges, like what how the AI ethics has a career plan, like how the career roadmap can be for new incoming data scientists or who wants to pursue research, right? So what other resources would you suggest that if we are looking for, so that we can actually deploy those solutions, apart from like we have talked about like deep learning models, cloud, everything is there. So any other specific resource you would say that we should know RFCs and read all those AI guidelines to make the solution when while development, not like during the audit, like whoever is coming, but anything specific when we as a data scientist when we are developing the solution.
There is a very good guidelines from Google that is like ML machine learning best practices,
Okay.
right? So they list a very good set, a very it's a large list. So they list what are the good practices you should follow when you're doing machine learning from the starting to the deployment level, right? And you see, when we talk about machine learning, at one stage it might look to be very different from standard software development, but it is also a software development. So the best practices that we follow for software development, the unit testing concepts, the agile development, all these things have to be implemented here as well. So
As well.
testing is very much important. Continuous integration, continuous deployment becomes necessary even with the model. The only thing that changes is what are the triggers. There may be a different trigger for a software and there may be a different trigger for a AI system. That's all.
Yeah. So, okay. So, anything specific advice you would like to give for the younger generation who are looking for careers in data science, that from day one they should think of building robust and as well as ethical solutions, or they should follow, apart from the guidelines you have talked about, any personal advice so that while doing any use case like building complex models, so these things remain in their mind, get imbibed in their mind, and they don't forget it.
The first thing which I would say is do not be afraid of programming or maths. Sometimes, means like, many times when you interact with the students, especially the fresh ones in the college, first years and all that stuff, even though they have studied C, C++ in their school, sometimes they are not really comfortable with programming. They're not comfortable with maths. And I think it's just in the mind. It's not really true. You give time to any subject, you can learn it. If a computer can learn it, why cannot you? Right? So that should be the attitude, and we should definitely learn. And then it's not the end. If I cannot do coding till the end part, if I'm not perfect or expert in coding, that is not the end of my AI career. Do I have understanding and intuitive understanding of what is happening? Can I see the bigger picture? right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if I talk about AI ethics, then just coding will not be sufficient. Can I
Yes,
think of
yeah,
ways
yes.
by which this particular model can be hacked by some miscreant? So
Yeah, the
that bigger picture
adversarial
becomes
attack.
important. Yeah, that big picture becomes important, right? So the important thing is to be able to learn. That's all I would say. And you should not be afraid of learning, no matter what your age, which field you are in. If you have to do something, and if you have to come up with a solution, you have to learn it, and you should not be afraid of learning it. And then AI is not restricted to computer field that ways. AI is used in almost every field. So I have friends who are biologists who are learning AI,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are mathematicians who are learning AI. There are physicists who are learning AI. So whichever field you are in, you can learn AI, even economy for that matter. Means I was reading a particular paper from a finance company where they have used reinforcement learning for doing some prediction of insurance, right? So it can be used in any field, and if we are using it in any particular field, we have to have understanding of that knowledge. And here means collaboration happens only
Okay.
when you can talk,
Yeah.
and for talking you have to have some common ground.
Yeah, so we have to have build good collaboration, not afraid of like coding. We should know the domain also, because whichever
Yes,
field we are going, we should have an understanding of AI and how we can build ethics, incorporate ethics into those solutions, right?
yes,
If I can summarize it correctly.
yes,
So,
perfect.
and you talked about programming Python. Other than Python, anything else you would like to
Look, Python is very good when we are doing experimentation. Like, for example, if I'm doing my experimentation, Python is very good, especially because TensorFlow and PyTorch libraries are available in Python. But when it comes to deployment, even for example, when we was talking about the robotics,
Mhm.
my Python code will not work because, as I told you, computational time was a problem, right? And in real time, even today, no matter how much computational time you have, no matter how good mobile you have taken, you will always come up to a place where it starts hanging, right? It
Mhm.
simply freezes. So why? Because computational time is still, it's finite, right? And
Mhm.
as much as we will have, if I can have, if earlier I could open only 5 applications, today I have 50 applications open. So eventually, no matter how much computational resources, how much memory my system has, it is going to have, right? So the thing is that I would say understanding of languages like C++ is also important.
Okay.
So
Right.
just saying
Right.
that I only know Python will not be sufficient if you are going into a core, solution.
Yeah.
Then you have to have understanding of some, compiler-based languages as well.
Exactly. So microprocessor based commands, how do we give that to that robot, right? For how the
Yes,
robot
yes,
executes code. So C,
right.
C++ remains the core of the programming languages. So anybody who
Yes,
can,
even TensorFlow is made in C++.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's the base. Means once you get C, C++ very thorough, then you can learn any language and deploy in any code.
true,
That's a
true.
very good insight. Means I totally resonate your feelings and echo it the same. C, C++ remains the base.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Amita. You want to say anything else? Any specific advice or anything? It was really great hosting you. I really got to know so many things. Means reinforcement learning, robotics. I have never worked on it, and I'm sure these insights will help, as well as quantum computing. Some of the insights that you shared, building ethics and fair models. But any else do you want? Do you think that I have not asked you, but you would like to highlight or you would like to share?
So you have covered almost everything. It was really, nice. You have carried out it so well, and I really enjoyed being on this show. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me. It was an absolute
Mm.
pleasure.
Yeah, I do understand because of tough times we are having in India, many people won't be able to join. But this would remain in YouTube, and I will do share in all my possible social channels so that people can have a more understanding on AI ethics.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Pleasure hosting you, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. Pleasure's mine. All the best. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye
Thanks for the
bye.
audience. Thanks. Bye.